Hello guys, get ready for new stories on this channel. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. What city or state? Thanks for your support. And now let's get started. Marcy Weston stepped off the plane, her chin high, exuding confidence. She felt no shame about her 6-week affair in Colombia. Why should she? She was successful, desirable, and stifled by life with Rick. Dr. Trey had awakened passions she'd long buried. Their affair was bold, thrilling, until Rick's furious phone call shattered the illusion. Hearing him rage about her brazen adultery had startled her, though part of her admired his sudden backbone. As weeks passed, Trey's charm faded. Once he sensed her marital troubles, he became controlling, cruel, and mocking. What once felt freeing became degrading, yet Marcy refused to admit regret. She endured his taunts out of pride, but the affair ended coldly, with Trey trading seats to avoid her on the flight home. Meanwhile, Penny, a colleague entangled in her own affair, revealed that Rick had threatened to expose her. Josh, Penny's husband, was not a man known for forgiveness, and sure enough, a process server ambushed Penny with divorce papers as soon as they landed on U.S. soil. Marcy feared being served divorce papers, but felt relieved when no one approached her. It confirmed what she believed. Rick was too weak to leave. She convinced herself he was home, hurt, but still devoted, waiting for her return. After 6 weeks with Trey, she was eager to reassert control, imagining Rick desperate to have her back. Her confidence shattered at the Ambassador Hotel. Expecting Rick's presence, she found an empty lobby. Dismissing a flicker of worry, she strode to the front desk. Then, one by one, her credit cards were declined. A sick feeling crept in. Forcing a smile, she demanded another attempt, but the clerk remained firm. Ignoring the whispers behind her, she stepped aside, certain Rick had an explanation. Marcy's unease deepened when her call to Rick failed. His number was disconnected. Panic flickered. Then a suited man approached, handing her a manila envelope. Rick wanted you to have this. No mention of legal service, no apology, just the unknown. Tearing it open, she found a typed letter and a smaller sealed envelope. As she read, shock tightened around her. Rick hadn't forgiven her. He had transformed. Cold, vengeful, far from the passive man she once dismissed. Her pulse pounded as she absorbed each line, but one phrase stood out. You apparently justified your actions by concluding I had a whirlwind affair with Deidre in Iraq. I did not. Our single indiscretion never crossed the line into intercourse. He described comforting a traumatized comrade. Then he compared it to her carefully planned liaisons. She remembered the smug justification she'd used whenever guilt threatened to bubble up. She pressed her lips tight, forcing herself to read on. I know you also had an affair while I was assigned to Korea. Someone told me about your strange parking routine at the Red Roof Inn. You never admitted it, but you and I both know what really happened. Anger heated Marcy's face. That was old history. Why bring it up now? They'd survived that time. She'd been discreet, or so she'd thought. Yes, it had been thrilling with the anesthesiologist who'd worked the night shift. Yes, it had ended the moment Rick returned. But it shouldn't matter now, she continued. From your letter, I see you decided we live in a relationship where one spouse unilaterally does whatever they want, no approval needed. I suppose turnabout is fair play. Marcy's pulse raced. Turnabout? Rick was threatening something big. Each subsequent paragraph confirmed it. He'd sold the house, drained bank accounts, quit his phone plan, and was about to vanish on an extended RV trip. She read feverishly, ignoring the curious glances of passers-by. Then she discovered the deeper horror. I shared the evidence of your extracurricular adventures with HR at the hospital. I have a contract ready for them to sign, guaranteeing they'll terminate you and your dear Dr. Trey to avoid me suing for failing to enforce their morality clause. Monday morning should be quite eventful for you. Marcy's heart lurched. She had once walked those hospital halls with pride, known as a skilled, if blunt, nurse. Losing that job, her identity, would devastate her, but Rick wanted exactly that. I gave our children copies of your photos and videos with Trey, his letter read. I told them the truth. I'm leaving for a long trip. They begged me not to cut you off, but I said I'd call you as often as you called me, 0 times. She could almost hear his mocking tone, so unlike the man she once dismissed as weak. Then the final blow. I'm not divorcing you. If you want out, file for abandonment. I won't contest. I've already taken what I need. The house, the cars, our money the kids respect. Enjoy the open relationship you forced on me. Oh, And I left you one last gift. A $500 Visa gift card. That's all the plastic you have left. Rick. Her hands trembled. Rage, humiliation, and fear twisted in her gut. She shoved the letter back into the envelope, refusing to acknowledge the pathetic gift. Tears threatened, but her pride held them back. Lifting her chin, breath shaking, she cursed Rick's name. He was the villain. He had ruined everything. Marcy straightened, marched to the front desk, and slid the envelope under her purse. Snapping her fingers, she demanded, "I need a room. My husband left me in a bind, but I can pay, cash, if necessary." The clerk hesitated. "We accept cash, ma'am, but we require a deposit and valid ID." Her stomach tightened. How much did she even have? Digging through her purse, she found barely $100, far from enough. Gritting her teeth, she tore open Rick's smaller envelope and pulled out the $500 gift card. She forced a smile. "Try this." If Rick was telling the truth, it would cover a night or two. Tapping her foot, she waited. The card processed. Relieved but seething, she paid for a single night. "Room 1010, Miss Weston. Enjoy your stay." The clerk was polite, but she sensed condescension. Or was it paranoia? Snatching the key card, she signaled the bellhop and stormed off. Fury burned through her, at Rick, at the humiliation, at how fast her perfect world was crumbling. The bellhop rolled her luggage cart behind her in awkward silence. As she pressed the elevator button, she glanced at her phone, wishing Rick would call, so she could lash out, demand an explanation, or at least verbally tear him to shreds. But his number was gone, disconnected. A silent reminder that he'd effectively cut all ties. The elevator doors slid open. She stepped in, the bellhop behind her, the letter burning in her purse like a brand of shame. Alone in her hotel room, Marcy paced, trying to make sense of it all. Her suitcase sat by the bed, city lights flickering beyond the tall windows. Yet all she saw was her own reflection, a woman unraveling. She sank onto the bed, remembering the moment she chose Trey. She had been certain Rick would never leave. Trey's confidence, his whispered flattery about her unfulfilled potential, that she was too hot for a dull marriage. She had welcomed his attention, believing Rick was spineless, someone who would wait obediently for her to return no matter what. How arrogant she had been, parading her affair, laughing about feeling liberated from an aging husband. When Rick's furious call came, she had smirked, convinced he'd calm down. He always did. Now she saw how her pride had driven him to act. A flicker of regret surfaced, but anger burned hotter. She needed to fight back. She had no home, no money, but she wasn't some powerless victim. After a fitful night's sleep, Marcy awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. She called the bank. Surely this was some mistake. But after explaining who she was, she got a cold, corporate reply. "Ma'am, all joint accounts have been closed by Mr. Rick Weston, using a valid power of attorney. We cannot divulge further details. We suggest you contact him directly." She hung up, fuming, knuckles white. Next, she called her children, both grown and out of state. She reached her son's voicemail, tried her daughter, who had always been closer to Rick anyway, straight to voicemail. She left a terse message. "I need to speak with you. It's urgent. Call me back." She refused to mention the fiasco in a voicemail, but some part of her suspected Rick had turned them against her. Next, she dressed in crisp slacks and a fitted blouse, hair pinned neatly, and took a taxi straight to the hospital. If she could cut off Rick's sabotage at the source, maybe the HR department would dismiss him as a bitter spouse spinning lies. After all, she'd earned the respect of her department head. She was known for being an excellent, if outspoken, nurse manager. They needed her skill and experience. Let them try to tarnish her. She'd fight tooth and nail. She arrived just before lunch, ignoring the curious stares of colleagues in the lobby. Word must be spreading. She marched to HR, expecting a quick resolution. A stern-faced woman behind the main desk greeted her. The nameplate read, "Miss Washington, HR Manager." Marcy recognized the name from Rick's letter. Her stomach clenched. Miss Washington's eyes flicked up coldly. "Marcy Weston, I've been expecting you." Her voice was clipped, disapproval coiling in every syllable. Marcy straightened, steeling her posture. "I've come to clear up these ridiculous claims my husband has apparently made. I don't know what he sent, but he sent us explicit photos, Miss Weston. Photos and statements from a private investigator. He also threatened a lawsuit for breach of our morality clause if we continued employing you or Dr. Trey Marshall." Marcy's mouth twitched. "That's outrageous. He's just a scorned husband. There's no real legal footing. And how dare you read private—" "You signed a code of conduct when you were hired, correct?" Miss Washington's brow arched. We have it here. She pulled out a folder. It includes a stipulation that staff in certain roles, especially those representing the hospital's image, are subject to dismissal for public scandals or immorality that could damage the hospital's reputation. She tapped a highlighted line. We have cause. This is nonsense, Marcy snapped, though her heart pounded. It wasn't a public scandal, just a personal matter. Miss Washington's voice was icy calm. The email your husband sent was quite thorough. It was circulated to many of your co-workers, doctors, philanthropic partners, and sponsors. The pictures, very explicit. People are talking about it across the hospital corridors and beyond. We've received complaints from staff feeling your behavior is unethical, not to mention from donors who prefer not to be associated with scandal. Heat rose to Marcy's face. Even in her worst nightmares, she hadn't imagined Rick would go so far as to plaster her humiliations across half the city. So that's it? You'll fire me? Just like that? Miss Washington pursed her lips. We're still reviewing the matter with legal counsel. I'm not here to debate the morality of your personal life, Miss Weston, but the hospital's board feels it must protect itself from a potential lawsuit and from public outcry. She slid an envelope across the desk. I'm afraid you are suspended without pay until further notice. Marcy stared in shock. She wanted to lash out with the most cutting words she could muster, but a swirl of conflicting emotions tangled her tongue. Instead, she snatched the envelope and turned on her heel. As she strode away, Miss Washington called after her. Security will escort you to collect personal items from your locker. A guard promptly appeared at her elbow, a towering man whose expression was impassive. She marched ahead, chin high, feeling the staff's eyes on her. Word had spread indeed. Some people stared wide-eyed, while others whispered behind her back. Marcy felt the humiliation sink deeper, fueling her rage. She found Dr. Trey near the nurses' station, cornered by a cluster of staff. His face was pale, sweat beading his forehead. A few nurses who once admired him stared with undisguised contempt. He saw Marcy and scowled, though there was fear in his eyes. What the hell is going on? Marcy demanded. Trey parted from the staff, grabbing her arm to lead her aside. Your psycho husband, Trey hissed in a low voice, sent pictures and videos to HR. He's completely torpedoing my career. I'm under investigation. This is insane. Marcy pulled her arm free. My psycho husband? You had no problem humiliating me with your little games in Colombia. You think I wanted to be plastered all over email newsletters? I'm about to lose my job too. He glared at her. Don't pin it on me. You're the one who was busy whining about your soft husband, telling me you basically had permission to do what you wanted. If I'd known he was a twisted snake, I'd have stayed the hell away. The elevator dinged down the hall. Security approached them. Trey stiffened, yanking a stethoscope from around his neck, stepping back like a cornered animal. Damn it, he muttered under his breath. I've been summoned to HR. Might as well be my execution. Marcy's lip curled. She felt no sympathy. She still remembered how he had gloated when Rick first called, mocking Rick's supposed weaknesses and telling her that real men don't whimper. Well, look at him whimpering now. She gave him a cold glare. Enjoy the open relationship, she spat, echoing Rick's taunt. Then she turned and walked away, leaving Trey to fume in security's wake. Marcy was nearly out the hospital door when a familiar voice spoke from behind. She spun around to see Leslie from next door, the very neighbor with whom Marcy had tried to orchestrate a swinger lifestyle behind Rick's back. Leslie's arms were crossed, her face a study in disappointment. Well, if it isn't the famous world traveler, Leslie said icily, eyes flicking up and down Marcy's still stylish outfit. I assume you've read Rick's letter by now? Marcy's stomach flipped. What are you doing here? Vincent had a checkup. I thought I'd drop by HR to file some paperwork for a new part-time position I'm taking. And guess what? I see your face all over the building. Hard to miss. Marcy swallowed, her arrogance colliding with the stinging shame of being recognized in the middle of her downfall. I'm sure you're having a grand time. Save your judgment. I hear you and your husband are into swinging, so don't pretend to be righteous. Leslie's lips parted in a bitter laugh. Swinging, yes, but not cheating. There's a difference. Vincent and I share everything openly, no lies or secrets. You tried to rope me into your fling with Trey behind Rick's back. That's not how it works. You got yourself into this mess, Marcy bristled. Don't you dare lecture me. You fed ideas to me for months, flaunting your open lifestyle. And look what it did to my marriage. Leslie shook her head. Don't blame me for your choices. Rick's a good man. If you'd had an honest conversation with him, who knows what arrangement you could have reached. Instead, you lied, manipulated, and humiliated him. I had no clue. You never even told him about your plan. Marcy clenched her fists. You're defending him after he's destroyed my entire life. He sold my house, took my money, turned everyone against me. He's the real monster here. Leslie's gaze hardened. You made him that way. Actions have consequences, Marcy. I told him as much over dinner. He wasn't interested in sleeping with me, by the way. He found the idea nauseating, given how you tried to drag us into your deception. Fire lanced through Marcy's cheeks. She wanted to hurl an insult, but the words wouldn't form. Finally, she managed a sneer. Tell him I hope he has a great life in that crummy RV. You can both keep your sanctimonious nonsense. She pivoted on her heel and stalked off, ignoring the gathering stares. By the time Marcy left the hospital, dark clouds loomed, and rain fell in sync with her mood. She was suspended, likely to be fired. Her credit cards were canceled. The house she once called home now belonged to a young couple. She pictured the backyard deck where she had once dreamed of freedom. Now it was theirs. Digging out her phone, she called 2 former co-workers for help. One, hesitant, mentioned Rick had sent evidence. The other refused to answer. Their rejection fueled her anger. So what if she'd strayed? Marriages survived worse. How dare they judge her? With nowhere to go, she returned to the Ambassador Hotel, forced to survive on Rick's humiliating gift card. In the taxi, she simmered. She had to find Rick. She tried old neighbors, even the real estate agent who had sold them the house. No one answered. He had erased every trace of himself. That night, Marcy stayed in her hotel room, staring at the city lights mocking her with their normalcy. She checked her phone. No calls, no texts, no support. But her inbox overflowed. Daring to look, she found forwarded emails from Rick, photos of her in bed with Trey. Disgust twisted in her stomach. The subject lines stung. My wife's new life. Doctors without morals. Open relationships. Her side only. He had sent them to friends, family, even church acquaintances. Rage shook her. She paced, imagining revenge, suing him, dragging him to court. But was it slander if the photos were real? He had the upper hand. Collapsing onto the bed, she gripped the sheets, seething. How could he do this? He had turned their private mess into a scandal. If only he had handled it quietly. They could have salvaged something. Instead, he was tearing her life apart, piece by piece. Still, a small voice inside her whispered that she had lit this fuse. She quickly crushed that thought. Morning brought a flicker of hope. Her daughter returned her call, leaving a voicemail that was heartbreakingly stiff. Mom, I just got your message. I'm not sure what to say. Dad told me everything. We saw the photos. He was thorough. I'm really disappointed, Mom. And I'm worried about him too. He's hurt and bitter. He said he's leaving for a while. Look, I love you, but I can't support what you did. I don't want to be in the middle of your war with Dad. Maybe someday we can talk, but I need time. I'm sorry. Marcy closed her eyes, tears threatening. Her own daughter had condemned her. She called again. Voicemail. She tried her son. No answer. Desperation crept into her voice as she left messages. Please, just let me explain. It's not what it seems. But she knew Rick had controlled the narrative. She spent hours searching for lawyers, hoping to sue Rick. But every firm rejected her. One was blunt. If the evidence is real, it's not defamation. And without money, you can't challenge asset sales. She hung up cursing. She had nothing. No job, no assets, no support. For the first time, true desperation hit. That afternoon, a strange email appeared. Her heart jumped. Rick? She opened it, scanning quickly. Marcy, you're probably ignoring me, but I'll try anyway. I set up this temporary email, so don't bother tracking me. I'll shut it down soon. Now you know how it feels to have your life twisted without your say. You created this system. I left a few of your things in a storage unit addressed below. Just random knickknacks, old letters, nothing valuable. It'll be unlocked Saturday, 8 a.m. to noon. After that, it's all gone. Don't expect me to be there. I've already started my trip. Let's say I'm a few states away. The open road is beautiful. I guess this is me being generous one last time. I'm only doing it because I used to love you, and I know you might want some trinkets from your past. Or maybe not. R. Marcy's chest clenched. He was systematically erasing her from their life. But there was a twisted courtesy to it. He was giving her the option to salvage a box of scraps. She typed a furious reply, only to see the email bounce back with an error. The address had already been deactivated. Damn him! At 7:45 a.m. that Saturday, Marcy stood in a deserted alley of grimy storage units, the sky overhead a dull gray. She'd spent another night at the hotel, her gift card quickly depleting. She'd barely eaten, hoarding what little was left for lodging. Exhaustion weighed her down. The rolling metal door of the indicated unit was padlocked. She glanced at her phone. 7:58 a.m. Would Rick keep his word? Right on time, a local manager wandered by, fiddling with keys. "You Marcy Weston?" he asked in a bored tone. She nodded. He unlocked the padlock, rolled it up. "Said I should open it at 8. I'll lock it back up at noon if you're gone." She stepped inside, her eyes adjusted to the dim light. She saw 4 or 5 boxes lined up, each labeled in Rick's familiar handwriting. Junk, misc, keepsakes, letters, and ironically, Marcy's indulgences. She cracked open the flaps, rifling through them. She sank to her knees, rummaging, emotions swirling. She felt weirdly exposed, as if Rick were still orchestrating her humiliation. She came upon an old photo of them, both smiling widely on a ski trip 2 decades earlier. In that snapshot, he held her hand, eyes bright with love. A pang of nostalgia stabbed her, followed immediately by the bitter taste of how everything had ended. She tossed the picture aside angrily. Time crawled. She didn't know what she was looking for, maybe some sign that Rick still cared. But every item was simply a relic of a marriage that had once been real. He'd curated these boxes to show her exactly what she'd tossed away. By 9:30, she'd sorted the items she truly wanted, mostly personal mementos not worth money, but brimming with sentimental weight. She considered leaving all the old love letters behind, but some perverse part of her stuffed them into a bag. She didn't want him to be the only one with the full story. She lugged the boxes to the sidewalk, hoping to flag a taxi. She was determined to keep what was left of her identity. Then came a voice behind her, an older woman stepping from a car, face etched with polite concern. "Marcy, I'm Emily Wellman. My husband and I bought your house." From Rick. Marcy's breath caught. She remembered Rick's letter. The young couple was named Rod and Emily Wellman. This woman looked older than Marcy had expected, but maybe the stress of a growing family weighed on her. She gave a cautious nod. "Yes, I'm Marcy. I'm sorry to surprise you. Rick told us about this storage unit, said we might want to pick up a few leftover things included in the sale. He said we could coordinate with you. Emily paused, looking uncomfortable. "I just wanted to say, we don't want any trouble. We never expected your home to be sold under these circumstances." Marcy's face contorted in anger. "My home! Yes, well, it's done. Congratulations on benefiting from my husband's little revenge spree." Emily's eyes filled with sympathy. "I shouldn't pry, but I can see you're going through a lot. If it's any consolation, the sale was legal. I know that's not comforting. But Rick told us you wanted a fresh start. I guess that wasn't entirely true." Marcy almost laughed bitterly. "He's an expert at lies now, apparently. I hope you enjoy the hardwood floors and the brand new deck I paid for." Emily shifted awkwardly. "If you'd like, we could let you visit sometime. If you have any memories in that house you'd like to—" "Stop!" Marcy snapped, tears burning her eyes. "I don't need pity. Take the house, decorate it however you like. I don't care anymore." Emily's face fell. She nodded, stepping away. "All right, I'm sorry this happened, truly." She retreated to her car, leaving Marcy standing on the curb with her boxes, shoulders heaving in silent fury. Back in her hotel room, the boxes piled in the corner, Marcy collapsed onto a chair and flipped through the old letters from Rick. One particular note caught her eye. An unsigned draft she had written after they'd had a terrible argument years ago. An argument about trust and loyalty when she suspected him of some fling in the Middle East. In it, she'd poured out her frustrations, her distrust, her simmering resentment. She'd never had the nerve to give it to him. Now, ironically, everything she had warned about in that letter had boomeranged back on her. "Rick, if you ever break my trust, I'll make you regret it. I'm not a woman who takes betrayal lightly. I will destroy the illusions that bind us." She let the paper fall from her hand. The arrogance in that draft stung her even now. She had never considered that she would be the betrayer, and she'd never believed that mild, obliging Rick would be the one to deliver total devastation. The day arrived. She couldn't renew her stay at the Ambassador. The front desk informed her that her gift card was nearly empty. She had no cash for an extended stay. She realized she'd have to move to a cheaper motel or find a friend to stay with. But she had no real friends left. Pride warred with desperation. But desperation won. She ended up at a dingy motel on the outskirts of the city, the sort of place that rented by the week. Stale air, peeling wallpaper, flickering fluorescent lights. She stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror and hardly recognized herself. Dark shadows rimmed her eyes. Her once pristine hair had lost its salon sheen, and her clothes were the same business slacks from days ago. She sank onto a sagging mattress. A roach scuttled across the nightstand, and she shut her eyes in disgust. How had it come to this? Her phone rang. She snatched it up, heart pounding. Was it Rick? But no, a withheld number. She hesitated, then answered, "Hello?" A smug voice came through. Dr. Trey. "You win, Marcy. They fired me, effectively blacklisted me in half the region's hospitals. My wife left me too, so thanks for that." She laughed bitterly. "I win? Look at me sitting in a roach motel. Rick took everything and lit my life on fire." "Well, that's what you get for hooking up with a jerk like me, I guess," Trey said, spitting the words. "You're no saint yourself. Next time, pick a fling that won't lead your spouse to waging nuclear war on everyone's careers." She wanted to scream at him, but found only emptiness. After a few seconds of silence, Trey hung up. She tossed the phone aside. The last faint glimmer of excitement she once felt with Trey was now replaced by utter loathing. In a moment of pettiness, Marcy decided to do one last reckless thing. She still had the phone number of an old buddy of Rick's from the military, a man named Ferris. She recalled Rick used to share details about his travels with Ferris. If anyone knew Rick's whereabouts, maybe Ferris would. With trembling fingers, she dialed. Ferris picked up. "Hello?" Her voice was tight. "Ferris, it's Marcy Weston. He sighed audibly. "Yeah, Marcy, Rick told me not to talk to you." Her nerves flared. "Don't you dare hang up. I know Rick is feeding you lies. Tell me where he is or—" "I'm sorry, I can't help you," Ferris said, firm. "Rick's been through enough. You want to fix your mess, do it yourself. He asked for space. I'm giving it to him." And then he clicked off. Fury whipped through her. She hurled the phone onto the bed. No one would help her locate Rick. The entire world was shielding him, enabling him to roam free while she was left to rot. A week crawled by, then two. Her suspension from the hospital became an official termination. A letter arrived at the motel. "Your position is hereby terminated for cause, per the Code of Conduct violation, effective immediately." Word of her scandal spread across the local healthcare network. She found no open doors. Meanwhile, the money from Rick's humiliating gift card was gone. She was forced to pawn her remaining jewelry for a fraction of its worth. She had always prided herself on being in control, but now she was losing that final pretense. At night, she sat in the dingy motel room, rereading Rick's typed letter that started it all. "I'm not divorcing you. I don't care about divorces, and I don't plan to remarry. I've gotten everything I need. If you want out, you do the filing. I'll be on the open road, enjoying my freedom. Just once, if you don't mind." The sheer cruelty of it stabbed at her each time. He had flipped her own words back on her. "Just once, if you don't mind," referencing how she'd casually told him about her fling as if it was no big deal. She realized with a shiver that his revenge was not only material but psychological, a slow, crushing destruction. She recalled how she had told him, once upon a time, that she wanted independence and excitement. He had responded by giving her isolation and despair. With nowhere else to turn, Marcy eventually mustered the cold determination to contact an attorney about divorcing Rick for abandonment. Maybe it was the only path left to reclaim a shred of dignity. She wanted some legal clarity. Maybe she could accuse him of misusing the power of attorney. The attorney told her the fight would be uphill. Rick had executed documents impeccably, had disclaimers for everything, and had recorded every real estate transfer with precise signatures. The money was gone, likely in untraceable accounts. Rick's letter indicated he'd used her own signature from the original POA, which she had voluntarily signed. The attorney spelled it out plainly. "You can sue, but you'll need a war chest. The outcome isn't guaranteed." Marcy stared hollowly at the legal estimates. She didn't have the funds, so it all looped back to Rick's final mocking invitation. She could file for divorce or remain married in name only, a woman with no husband, no assets, and no hope. She left the office feeling numb. Her illusions of fighting Rick in court had collapsed under the weight of practical reality. She drove the battered used car she'd managed to purchase with pawnshop money back to the motel. The sky hung low, heavy with rain. Dark clouds pressed in like an omen of endless gloom. She sat behind the wheel, engine ticking in the silence. For an instant, she let tears slip free, unstoppable. She, who once strutted with unshakable confidence, was now crying in a motel parking lot, the stench of stale cigarettes drifting through a cracked window. When at last she forced herself to move, she unlocked her motel door and staggered inside, tossing her bag onto the rickety table. She eyed the boxes from the storage unit, which she had stacked in the corner. Wrinkled love letters spilled from the top, mocking her. She hammered her fist against the table, fury blazing. "Rick Weston!" she hissed through clenched teeth. "You vile bastard!" Yet even as her voice trembled, she heard in her mind an echo of that phone call he'd made weeks ago, his tone raw, betrayed, hurt. Perhaps in some twisted sense, she had molded him into this. She had crushed his pride, flaunted her affair, and left him feeling worthless. And the gentleman had retaliated by becoming something monstrous, overshadowing her arrogance with an even more ruthless brand of vengeance. In one last grim gesture, she opened her phone's photo gallery. A shot from her earliest affair, the Red Roof Inn rendezvous, caught her eye. She stared at the younger version of herself, smirking, standing next to some nameless fling. She tapped delete, as though erasing that memory might lighten the burden. But it didn't. Her phone still housed countless images from her life, images Rick had already stolen and weaponized in a public forum. He had won. That knowledge felt like shards of glass in her veins. She was left with the meager possessions from the storage unit, a tarnished reputation, and no safety net. The unstoppable avalanche of Rick's revenge had buried her. Night fell once more. The city outside nothing but a haze of neon signs and distant headlights. Marcy huddled on the bed, hugging her knees, letting herself taste the raw bitterness of her downfall. Perhaps if she had been kinder, if she had not flaunted her arrogance, if she had asked for an open marriage honestly, things might have turned out differently. Perhaps if she had not shrugged off Rick's angry calls, he would never have gone to such extremes. She loathed him, but some part of her recognized the seeds of his hatred had been planted by her own hand. So ended Marcy Weston's illusions of invincibility. She was left with the echoes of her own triumphant laughter in Trey's hotel bed, now replaced by the quiet drip of a leaky faucet in a cheap motel. In that tiny space, reeking of old cigarettes, she finally faced the brutal truth. Her arrogance had unleashed Rick's vengeance, and he, to her surprise, had proven he could be an even darker villain than she could ever imagine. With the last harsh laugh caught in her throat, Marcy stared into the darkness, haunted by her own reflections, realizing too late that one act of reckless betrayal can trigger a storm of consequences from which there is no escape.